press record. I don't like them to miss the best part. Isn't this always the best part? It's always, here's what I knew. I say this as I was like, that Taylor's going to look so light and shiny.
Light
and I'm
shiny.
like, top knot.
But about 30 minutes ago, mine was up and then I just took it down and put it in a lower knot.
I was like, she's just going to be glowing and I'm going to be
but you're
over here.
Let's be real.
Is the side.
You're sweet. Thank you.
Over here on the side. I'm so happy to meet you. What's in the background? What's in the
background? So we have some sacred geometry, which I wish I could tell you what exactly it stands for, but I don't know what it stands for.
It's other people might call it shapes. You and I would most definitely call it sacred geometry.
Exactly. And I love the energy of it. So I don't really need to know exactly what it stands for, right?
Like, could that just be our whole podcast?
Yes.
Do you know what I'm saying?
All right, and we're done. See you later.
I hope you learned everything you needed to hear today. But honestly, that's the whole thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Right?
It's life. Yeah. We don't need to know exactly.
Let me choose what I'm going to believe about this frame. Instead, one person might just call it a diamond. And you're like, no, it really means something to me. That's a choice, wouldn't you say?
Yeah. Totally choice. I mean, and I think that just goes with anything, we have meaning for things when we give meaning to it. Right.
Oh, yeah. Well, I don't know. I'm so interested. I mean, I have 1,000 things to talk to you about. I do love the story of a spiritual awakening. So I really need to hear that. Truly, but when I people who struggle with eating disorders and addictions and life, a lot of them really balk at this idea of spirituality. I do understand why, because I was there too. And so many people have been hurt by religion and even hurt by, cultist beliefs or spiritual bypasses that come with spirituality. And it's such a necessity when you're deciding to have a different trust with life, which I think is what recovering is. And so I always say, spirituality is a shift in what you're choosing to believe, a la sacred geometry, a la your picture. I'm curious we're not like good friends yet, though I'm certain we will. We got introduced. I know it's saying thank you. Oh God. Yeah. Thank you. We got introduced by a common friend. And I literally went on your Instagram for 5 seconds. I was like, come on my show right now. You're like, oh my God, same. Love.
And that's resonance, right? That's what I'm talking about is resonance. And I'm sure we'll dive deep into that. But when you have that, there's no, I need to research. I need to spend 20 days, in meditation. And,
I'm worried about what my audience is it on brand? I've tried to in my second year of this podcast, I was just doing what I thought I should be doing. And I'm just I'm doing what's interesting to me.
Yeah. And we need that, I feel like we're all that paradigm of the boxiness and it's just even professionalism. I think about that a lot. What does that even mean? Being professional, right?
Well, I'm not the right person to ask.
Yeah. I think we're just moving away from that. Yes, we need to be on time for things. Yes, we need to maybe have, structure, but when it comes to what we're wearing, what we're saying, how we're speaking, I think that, that's all pretty much dying in a sense where realness and authenticity is really rising.
My teacher, Marsha Linehan, who created dialectical behavioral therapy, she says that one of the markers of validation is radical genuineness. And it's the sense that, and I think you and I are like that. I talked to the mailman, and if Obama was here, and my dog and my next door neighbor, and I really try to treat everybody exactly the same. And what's interesting about it is that makes people feel safe. It makes people feel safe to know that you're not putting on a show. She says no white coats. I love that.
Well, and I think too, then I was thinking about this morning. So there's no synchronicity or there's no coincidence to this. Everyone's needed. And I think when we put ourselves or we put other people on a pedestal, like this person, that public figure, that celebrity is better than this, that's when we're in trouble because every single person is needed. The plumber, I don't know how many times our house has had plumbing issues this year.
The most.
I need him. I need these people. I need people who are doing, amazing things in the world and who are teaching. Yes, but every single person is needed. And I think when you have that mentality, that's when you are just loving everyone and you're treating every single person the same, whether it's a waitress or whether
Yeah.
it's, whoever.
Yeah.
And
I'm Jewish.
it comes from,
Yeah.
yeah.
And I'm just coming off the high holy days. I'm just coming off of, the new year and the Day of Atonement. And that's like all they were talking about in my temple was like, there was this one phrase that they said that was so powerful, which was effectively like, just act like your heart is pointed towards heaven. I was like, God, that's the most simple direction I ever heard. I got to tell you, today I'm nailing it.
I can tell you're on fire.
In a week, I'm going to call you, be like, Taylor, life is. You're going to be like, what happened to the heart to heaven? I'm like, right.
But
But
that's
the other
duality,
thing,
right?
yeah,
That's
that,
life.
thank God. But the other
Yeah, we
thing
have
we were saying was
permission.
that, which is, hey, how about this idea that you were made like nobody else in this world, which means you're special. And more importantly, like means you're needed. We can
Yeah.
lose, especially in addictions. I mean, they're just the most selfish of diseases because they get you so full of self,
And it was interesting that you said that there are a lot of women and obviously men deal with this too inside addiction who have almost like a weird taste towards spirituality. That
Oh,
was
yeah.
when you mentioned that, that was a little bit shocking. I do understand the association between religion, right? Because, and even for me, being a part of multiple religions and having, my experiences with that, it's one of those things where there is a lot of healing even within that
Oh,
to get
yeah.
back to saying the G word, God, right? Or, even acknowledging a lot of these things. But
Well, I
worth
actually
it.
think I mean, this is just my experience in like this 20 years of being an addictions and eating disorders therapist. What I find, I'm so curious what you think, is that just people are entrenched. Like it's a scary thing to let go of the idea that I just can't get well or I need this. You don't understand. I mean, that was like my calls to worship in the beginning. Like I was just worshiping my eating disorders and my addictions. And, the calls to worship were, you don't understand. I need this. Stay away from me. I'm not ever going to get well. That negativity it's protective. And I think in its own way, it's like a bad habit, but like close to an addiction. And that's why I think people shun at spirituality. It's a threat. Happiness is a threat to the mind.
That's so true. And I feel like, you become addicted to your state of mind
Oh,
and
yes.
almost like if you detach and disassociate from that, I'm very open in saying that I used to be full of excuses, everything was someone else's fault. And, for me, it was getting out of that mindset and really reminding myself that, oh my gosh, once you take full responsibility for this, you are going to have a completely different life. And I think that that's a lot of it. And I think this, not just within addiction, just within anything, when you actually, move forward and become successful, there's going to be a whole other level that you're going to have to take responsibility for. So I think that whole identity aspect, it can be scary as hell to move
Mhm.
out of that.
Yeah, I mean, I do read Gay Hendricks' Big Leap, best book.
Oh my gosh, that book.
I'll put it in. I mean, I put it in the show notes like all the
It's
time, but I'll
so
put it in the show
good.
notes
So good.
again.
That's a good reminder to go back to
It's
that.
in a way, I think it's like the 100 level class. If you're trying to shift what you're choosing to believe or trying to level up spiritually and you don't even know what that means,
Mhm.
he's a great starter. He's a
Yeah.
great starter model. Wait, can you tell us about you? This is what I mean. Like, oops,
Sure. Hi.
we forgot to get to know you. Can you tell
So
us about your
where
spiritual
do
awakening? I think,
what
why are we chilling you? I mean, why are we besties already? Which I
yeah,
love.
right.
So good to meet you.
So my spiritual awakening was I would say I'm a slow burner. I didn't have like this really crazy, like I was like in the fetal position and I saw God. Like it wasn't anything like that. My background, so as I briefly mentioned, I come from a very Catholic family. I rebelled against it like most people do, just couldn't really, associate with it. I always knew that there was a God, but it didn't feel good for me being in church. It never felt good. Fast forward to when I was about, I believe I was 21, 22. I was really craving having a relationship with the divine, call it God, call it source, call it creator. And I started looking for another church. And so I ended up becoming a part of another organization, soon realizing that it was the same thing, right? It was everyone, praying to a God on Sunday and then not really being as, as faithful as integrity on the other 6 days of the week. Right. And so I finally got to a point where I knew there was more. I started seeing lots of synchronicities, aka like angel numbers, as people would call them, the triplets of numbers like 444, 222, things like that. And I just started to question things. I've always been a very rebellious person. My dad used to always say that I should have been an attorney because I love to argue about anything and prove my point. I love to just question things. And I want to have that deeper meaning of life. And so I just, around the age, I think it was 28, 29. So I was a little bit later, I guess, as you would call nowadays, with like, the Gen Zs.
I was like
talking about
33. So I mean, God bless them. Yeah.
I'm like, you're 12. How do you know this?
I was like an old maid if it happened for you at 28. I was like a geriatric spiritual awakening.
Oh my God. Yeah. And so I started just asking more questions, and, more was being revealed to me. And I first started, so my background, going into what I went to school for, is exercise science. So health and wellness, nutrition, that's actually what I went to school for. I too, dealt with a lot of eating disorders. I was an NFL cheerleader for a few years. I mean, I can't even begin to tell you how that really transformed me in really great ways, but also the eating aspect. I don't need to tell anyone about, what the pressure was and things
Wait,
like
maybe
that.
you could though. Could you tell us a little bit about
Yeah.
it? Just in
So
the like this show, actually, we like
absolutely.
really want to know about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So the first team that I danced for was the Arizona Cardinals. And again, I cannot emphasize the experience enough. I thought it was a great experience. However, knowing what I know and just the healthy way of doing things, a lot of us, and again, I'm including myself, we did a lot of things that weren't as healthy. I was actually in charge of the physical fitness aspect on the Arizona Cardinals. I also danced for the Redskins as well. Commanders is what they're called
exactly.
now. And I was in charge for nutrition. The what?
I said, good save, good save.
Oh yeah. And I knew what I knew, but I also, it was a difficult juxtaposition because the directors only knew what they knew, and we would get weighed every week, and that's not, I mean, anyone knows nowadays that that's not a great indicator of health at all. I mean, muscle.
But they weren't weighing you to make sure you were healthy, were they?
Oh no,
Right.
they were weighing us to make sure that we hit
skinny
certain marks. So when you audition, you are expected to stay in that same shape, that same body, or you get benched, meaning you don't dance. So we would quite literally get weighed. It would usually be by surprise because girls would do some crazy things. I fortunately didn't do some of the crazy things that people would do, like sit in saunas for hours, take laxatives, all that stuff, very, very real. And, we would have these weigh-ins, and of course, me knowing what I knew, I couldn't really I guess now in retrospect, I did bring up, like, can we do maybe BMI? Can we do maybe body fat percentage? Like, even then, that's crazy to think about. Like, we didn't really need to do that. And times have changed, and I know organizations are doing a lot differently, but there was a lot that I really messed up because of that. One being my hormones. I remember getting, having PCOS and having just like really horrible periods and just a lot of things going on, and going to my doctor, and they were saying you basically don't have any estrogen, because I depleted myself, and I was like 26, 27 years old. And so it was really that awakening moment of realizing that, even though I was healthy, so to speak, there were a lot of things that were chaotic within my body. And so I started to learn a lot more, not just, what I learned in school, but just doing my own research, understanding what is going to nourish my body, not focusing on calories, but again, micronutrients, more macronutrients. And, it's been an amazing journey because even right now, I don't weigh myself, but I have healed so much within me, both in the physical sense, but then comes in the energetics, which I'm sure we're going to talk about, here soon, that the healing work within the energy healing that I do, that has transformed a lot for me as well. And so, it's one of those things where I believe I had to go through it. And I think that that's probably the message I want to leave for those who are going through it, who have recovered, who are in remission. Your voice is meant to be heard in some capacity to teach it like you're doing right now. You're not going to go through this for no reason. It's meant to be shared at one point, right? I don't want to encourage anyone if they're not compelled or ready to do that. But it's something that I just truly believe that I'm meant to share, among other things. And I believe that's how we learn, is through story.
Oh, yeah. Was it like, what was it like? Did you have to make weight? Like, did you have to take these? And I just remember I worked at a weight loss camp, and the owner would weigh all the counselors, every week. It was like very, and I don't know, he's like he really became a father. I think we were all working out our daddy issues on him, and we would all do the same. We would starve the night before. I mean, I remember one time I walked in a bathing suit because I wanted to drop weight, and then, by the way, the worst part of that, I don't know if the cheerleaders, but like, then we would go binge our brains out at the Dunkin' Donuts at the bottom of the street, and it was like, and I think I love what you're saying, because like my favorite phrase that so many people are saying to me these days, which is just, it's balm to my soul, is you don't know what you don't know.
Yes.
Like, and it's amazing to me. I'm just old now, and it's like just amazing what I just didn't have standards for myself at the time, because I didn't know how to. I didn't know I needed to. Now, I mean, I'd be like, you can go fuck yourself. I'm not getting on the scale. Thanks.
And, I was actually just talking about this yesterday on a podcast, and that's where grace comes in, because we don't know what we didn't know. Right. I mean, I'm sure there were podcasts. I mean, the original OG Joe Rogan was out and around, but there wasn't this amount of resources. And I think, this is a whole other topic for another day, but even thinking back to our parents, they only had the resources that they had in that time. And even I was thinking about even 2012, 13, 14, that's when I danced. We had, I didn't utilize YouTube, but there wasn't even a big following on Instagram. YouTube or Facebook just had barely come out. So it's one of those things.
There wasn't. I mean, now there's an uprising. I mean, if anybody got a sniff of this happening, the kind of, and that's kind of the best part of social media. But yeah, I think it's just it's before people started really, I think, knowingly and acutely understanding how toxic diet culture was. And it was just still like, yeah, honey. Yeah. I mean, you should see the Charlotte Hornets dancers. I'm just thinking about this as you're like, I have never seen a more diverse, beautiful group of dancers in the history of my life. I was at a basketball game last winter, and it was just, I mean, for me, maybe not for everybody there. Because I used to weigh 325 pounds. And so the idea that bodies are just so appreciated.
Yeah.
And these women, at least as they presented, though I'm sure you could tell a different story, like they were just happy and lively and dancing and shaking. Yeah. And I was like, yes.
And I think that's real. I mean, I think, when I was dancing, I absolutely loved it. I really enjoyed the craft. I mean, you probably know this, but a lot of people don't. We were athletes. I still consider myself an athlete, the amount of training that we had to put in.
Oh, yeah.
And, it's just, to my knowledge,
the core strength alone. I mean, I do like hardcore Pilates, and then I watch dancers, and I'm like, I don't understand how you guys lift both legs. Like, that's a lot.
Yeah. And, there's just, it's unfortunate that there's different standards. I mean, you would never weigh, the NFL players aren't required to keep a max weight, right? I think if we're kind of doing this for comparison, they're not required. If they came in with this much muscle, they need to sustain it and they need to keep it. But we also got paid like shit. So, that's a whole other story for another day. But, I genuinely loved it. And I think that, if you want to talk about like, why did we allow, let's call it what it is, abuse to happen? It's because we didn't want to step on any toes. You can get kicked off the team. One of the sayings that I remember, and, again, this was passed down, so I don't even blame directors, was, you're easily replaced.
Wow.
You're replaceable, And so, of course, as a woman who loves her craft, loves to dance, that's why we do it. To hear you're replaceable, that's just,
Just
it's one of those
breathing
things
fear
where
into you. Yeah.
yeah, and you don't want to ask questions. Even for me, having the role that I had of being in charge of fitness and nutrition, that was a lot of, the reason. And it's even looking back, I'm like, I could have done more. But at the same time, I had my own shit too that I had to heal and work through. And like you said, like I could have easily been like, fuck you, I'm not getting on that
I
scale,
think
but
that
I
is
would have been
so
kicked
hard.
off in 2 seconds.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think that takes age and experience and a
Yeah.
lot of faith, which it doesn't sound like we
Yeah.
moved into that part. Like to me, I'd be like, there is no loving divine power that wants me to be treated this way.
Yeah.
But it's also overriding like these well-worn snow grooves of I deserve this and all that other stuff that maybe not you, but lots of people really, inadvertently subscribe to. I just love when people say they don't believe in, God. It's like, we're all praying to something. And if you haven't eaten, we're all praying to something. So you might as
Yeah.
well pray to these beautiful beliefs that we're going to talk about. So
Yeah.
exercise scientist.
Science, exercise science, not scientists, though.
I
That sounds
I
really
think
cool.
I like to call you an exercise scientist. And I
You know what?
And I think I'm going to
at this day and
continue
age, you
doing
can call
it.
yourself whatever you want.
You know what I
I'm
mean?
an exercise scientist.
There's no formalities. So you're so you're in this exercise science field. And then when do you, like, by the way, parallel stories, the CBT therapist, and then I have to go on my own path too, right? Like it's more than the mind. Promise you that. So where did that happen for you?
It was really with clients. So I was working for a pretty well-known, at least online at that time, company where we were making nutrition plans. Here's your certain amount of macros, here's a certain amount of calories. I ended up leaving that company for other reasons than that, but I ended up going out on my own as an entrepreneur. And, it was just, it was having these coaching calls with women. And for one, realizing that 99% of our calls were about emotional well-being. It was about mental well-being. It was about spiritual well-being. And instead of me coaching them and saying like, well, you just got to put down that and that's how you're going to get, abs. It was exhausting hearing myself talk. It was like, I cannot tell and talk to another woman about their body anymore. I just can't do it. So I kind of transitioned into detoxification. I'm still very passionate about that because I think our body does need to detox in order to be healthy. I moved more into like the mind body connection and hormones since I went through that. And then ultimately I started learning more about vibration and energy and frequency. And
what prompted that? Like, that's not a normal, like, I think you might go into like gut health or, like
kind of
eating disorders. Like,
yeah.
why, like, I think usually most people would take like that small circle and then just make a smaller, larger circle around. I mean, you really went cosmic there. What inspired that?
Intuitive. I think it was just my soul was like, okay, this phase is complete. And I became more and more interested in energy and that everything was energy. And I started working with an energy healer where I saw so many shifts in my own life where I've always considered myself a very happy person, but I started just experiencing more joy. My skin felt better. I was having more positive thoughts all the time. My business, which had, just pretty much started, it started to flourish. I started getting more clients and, I started just really learning more about the energetics and how everything is energy and how everything starts as an energetic component, meaning the language that we speak, the thoughts that we're thinking, the expression that we're giving out into the field, meaning the quantum field. And so in pretty much receiving these healings myself, I thought, oh my God, this is powerful. I need to be teaching this. And so I've then since
Taylor,
then,
can I ask a quick question? Because I think this is like largely unfamiliar for my audience. So I want to try to get like a little micro about it. Can you explain to us like what an energy healing is? I think we want to get that basic for a second.
Sure. Yeah. So energy healing on a very simplistic level. So we have an energy field and we have the quantum field. So quantum field meaning that what we can't see, right? We see it as air. We kind of look in front of us and it's air. It's what we're breathing in. There's actually a lot of information within this quantum field. And so we also have an energy field around us. if you've ever looked into Joe Dispenza's work, or if anyone's familiar with any of his type of meditations, he talks about this field that we all have the ability to tap into and to shift. And so it's called the electromagnetic field, field of consciousness, again, quantum field. And so when we have this energy that we're able to work with, and not to mention work with God, work with angels, work with different beings of light, we're able to quite literally transform also within our body. And so if you think of, let's say, most people are familiar with Reiki, or at least they've heard of it.
Right.
So Reiki, for example.
Well, can you say what it is just in case? We're
Sure.
not?
So Reiki is essentially, it's a Japanese form of energy healing and energy medicine, where a practitioner who is trained in this attunement will lay their hands on certain parts of your body, being used as a conduit. So again, conduit from God, conduit from energy from above, from heaven, whichever you choose to call it, with that intention that you are actually healing parts of your body. And this can be
Or moving
many
energy, right?
exactly.
yeah.
Yeah. Move. So
I'm
Reiki
I'm
is
a
more
Reiki
so,
healer, by the way. This is
yeah,
like
it's okay.
my big reveal here for everyone.
So
Yeah, yeah,
Reiki is more so, I would say, moving energy out. I like to think of it as like a really good energetic facial, right?
Yeah.
So when you go and get a facial, it's like, moving out, certain layers at the top of your skin. It's really rejuvenating, and you have to do it pretty often. It's going to be dependent from woman to woman. So it's like this really nice kind of shower.
Yeah.
When you're talking about the work that I do, which is alchemy, which I'll define that here in a second. Alchemy is like that plastic surgery where you actually, if the different things that we have within our body, maybe it's a health ailment, maybe it's an emotional ailment, maybe it's something from even a past life, with which some people may believe in, some people may not, but we've had thousands and thousands of lives, especially really older souls. And so when you think about keeping really good care of your body, you also want to understand, because we have this energetic field around us, because everything we come in contact to is energy, has their own energetic field. We do need to consistently and constantly and consciously be aware of that, to clear it, to cleanse it. And so the work that I do, I actually teach this to other women. So I teach women how to do this on themselves. I do it.
That's so cool.
Yeah, it's really fulfilling work. And I also do healings on them, because again, it's almost like, schooling in a sense. So I'm in my 4th year of this apprenticeship of alchemy. So I'm learning more and more skills so that I can teach this work and then also do the healings. So going back to what alchemy is, a lot of people hear alchemy and they kind of think of chemistry, which, yes, because whenever you transform, like, let's say a metal into maybe a liquid, that's a process of alchemy. Alchemy, in a sense, is taking a lower frequency, lower level energy, things like fear, things like pain, shame, unworthiness, which that's a lot of what has to do, if we're speaking to eating disorders or any
For
type of
sure.
addiction, it's unworthiness. It's taking those and alchemizing them, transforming them into a higher frequency, meaning love, meaning joy, meaning worthiness,
Is it
meaning
painful?
more power. No. So what is painful? So I'm glad you brought this up. There's no pain associated with it. However, if you think about suppressed emotions, if you think about how, the way I like to explain it is, we all have bodies. Yes.
Yes.
So a lot of times energetically, our bodies are, historic in a sense. It's almost like walking into a house that hasn't been touched in hundreds of years. It's dusty, there's some cobwebs around. And so when you start to do this work, when you start to do the work on yourself, and we can talk about how every single person is a self-healer. You don't need me. You may just need to know what to ask for. But when you start this process of alchemy, and when you start to heal yourself, all of that shit's going to rise to the surface.
Yeah.
All of that dust is going to come to the surface.
Yeah.
So it's not necessarily painful, but it can be uncomfortable as hell. Like even just yesterday, I had to text one of my mentors, because I'm like, look, I'm releasing a lot of pain right now. I'm feeling like, I need just some extra support, energetic support, because there was a lot of things that I was working through. And so when I always say it's such a brave act to do this work, because when you're diving into healing what's not serving you, aka those lower frequencies, the energy that you don't want to hold. When it comes up to heal, when it comes up to the light, you're going to see it. You're going to
So
feel it.
I
And
mean,
it's
I
going to
appreciate
manifest.
everything you're saying. I actually agree. But like, Taylor, it is painful. You're just like, you're just like Queen Reframe
I appreciate the devil's advocate.
no,
It's
like
painful.
I'm like, well, let me tell you, like I've sat in dark nights of the soul. Like shit is painful.
It's not
now,
physically painful.
Oh, it can
That's
be. That's gonna be painful. I don't know. My head
it
can
can't.
hurt. My
So
stomach can show itself, and emotional
that is
pain is
true.
emotional pain.
Yeah,
I just
that is
don't.
true.
I think. Listen, I think the reframe of it being the other word you used is great, but like I don't know, like everything's painful because sitting in that stagnant energy, being hopeless and not being able to see any way out, like, but like in Shawshank Redemption, like at least in my experience, and I mean, I haven't been to a doctor in years, you know what I mean? Like I only go to healers and acupuncturists and whatever, but I actually know when I come back from a good healing. I was with Rob Morgan, one of my healers. One of the times I was with him, we were doing all this forgiveness exercises. And in the middle of it, I just start hysterically crying and I was literally vomiting a bile for 8 minutes. That was painful.
Yeah.
Very useful. Completely forgave my mother after that, but that was unpleasant. It was terrible, but I would do it again for the outcome.
So I see what you're saying, painful in the sense, when you first asked that question, I'm thinking like pain, like having sharp pains and you feeling the energy moving out and it's like,
yeah.
surgery.
No, that's right. Right.
Yes, in a sense. So to your point, yes. I mean, it's painful in the sense of it's incredibly uncomfortable. I mean, talk about
worth it.
Alchemy is crying and it's so powerful. Like I I always say, I'll have women come to me and they're like, is it normal that I'm crying a lot more? And I always say, I would be worried if you weren't.
It's because
yes. And I think that's
we're
where
so scared of pain is what I'm thinking.
I think we're scared. There's a lot there that you're scared of pain. You're scared of judgment. You're scared of transformation.
Oh, yeah.
You're scared of upper limiting, actually transitioning out of your current state. But I think too, you mentioned like, you can feel hopeless and you can feel this and this, I think those are choices as well. And here's what I mean by that before, people say, what do you mean it's a choice? When I'm in it, gave you the example of yesterday being in a situation where I was just like, it felt like grief, it felt like parts of me were dying in a good way, parts of, and it doesn't feel like that in the moment, but I still have that higher perspective, right? When we have that higher perspective, when we are almost prepared in a sense that, okay, I'm opting in because it's a decision. I'm opting in to do this healing work. And it doesn't have to be energy healing. It can be therapy. It can be hypnosis. It can be many different things.
The thing I'm thinking too, like, I think when people are scared to like give up a substance, they're scared about the pain they're going to feel.
Yeah. Well, they're actually going to feel because that's what was suppressing. They were using that as a way to suppress.
It's the starting point of healing is when you put down the substance. Like that's when we can really begin the work,
Exactly. And I think when, I heard someone say this and I cannot remember who it was, that if you are going into a situation where you know that you are looking to heal something and whatever that may be, mental, emotional trauma, physicality, when you are opting in, and I keep using that for a reason because you have to take responsibility for this work whenever you opt into it. You almost want to be prepared and know that there's going to be a, so to speak, army coming after you, army of thoughts, army of emotions. And when you're prepared for that, you're not scared by it. You're not shocked by it.
That's
right.
So good.
So
yeah.
That's the point I really want to make and to come across, that you're not in this victim mentality. Will I say, the first year I was doing this work, were there times where I did go into that mode? Of course, but I've evolved and I know that there is no energy I want to keep within me. So I need to let it out. Therefore, I have a higher perspective. I can be, as crazy as this sounds, but again, I've been doing this for 6 years now.
Yeah.
I can be quite literally on the ground, crying, processing, having this process of alchemy happen. And I can still almost be excited that at the other end of this, I'm actually going to experience more love, more joy.
I really feel, I sometimes I sometimes forget what it was like. I never really forget what it was like, but I think I'm in this big releasing of anger phase. And so I'll just be in my car and I will there will be like a primal scream that comes out of me. And there's a part, and I remember when I first stopped eating sugar and flour and stopped drinking, and I cried all the time. I mean, I wept. And there was a part of me, and maybe this is like the higher vibration, that was like, this is normal. This has been sitting inside of you
Dormant.
since your dad drove off a cliff. Like this is the oldest pain. And that, I mean, that's the Eastern medicine idea, like of it's supposed to, Western medicine is about steroids, suppress.
Oh yeah. Band-Aid, cover it
Right.
up.
Like this
Yeah.
is like, yeah, like I think there's a lot of anger inside
Yeah.
of you, and let's
And
get it out.
And that's the grace part, right? And I really just that's a lot of, my mission is just normalizing this and allowing women to understand that it's not just normal, it's necessary. We have to get this out or it'll manifest as disease.
It does, right?
Addiction, there's many, many things that
Cancer,
it manifests into. And if we just gave ourselves permission to feel, to understand, and that's why I mentioned, thousands of lives, because if you think about all of the different things that we've already experienced in this life, right?
Yeah.
And then you add on the addition of having different avatars and different bodies, then there's a lot of cleanup to do. So you don't always want to be, focusing on, oh my God, how can I heal more? Though I think that's a really powerful intention, but you also want to understand that you're going to have stuff to clear and you're going to have stuff to heal. And that's why, when women come into this, or they'll message me and they're like, do you offer one-on-one sessions? I'm like, no, I don't. I'm not going to do one session with you because that's not enough. You have to be doing more than that. And that's why I have longer mentorships. And so this is a commitment, and it's one of those things that the more that you can take full responsibility. And again, that doesn't mean that you created the trauma or that you actually had part in it. It just means that you take responsibility from here moving forward.
I have so many questions.
Shoot.
I want to binge on this. Okay. Where do we find the balance between how do I heal more and I am enough as I am? Like, where do we, because I deal with a lot of people who are like healing junkies who are always looking outside that. If you said you need to be with me for the rest of your life, they'd be like, okay, fine. Just as long as you fix me. Right. Like, how do we find that balance of I am enough and I have exactly what I need inside of me versus, you need to be in an extended healing program? Where is that?
You live in gratitude every single day. You wake up and make a decision that you are going to be grateful for where you're at, that you may have far to go. Listen, I still have,
I don't think that's the question is more. I think there are a lot of people out there who are very susceptible to everything that we're talking about. So much so that they're never enough as they are. They'll never just sit and think, you know what? I'm okay. I'm gonna take a year off all healing. Right. My agent had to have this like intervention with me. She's like, stop going to healers. Just stop. You have everything. Yeah. It's enough already. Like, and I think there's a real balance.
Yeah.
In that. And I wonder where you sit on that.
I think to an extent, everyone at some point has some form of an addicted personality, right? Addictive personality. So I think that with anything, right? I mean, you can go too far down that hole where you're just like, I need more information. I call them information junkies. It's the same thing with wanting to consume a podcast and then more and then more and more and more, right? So I personally believe, from what I know for energy, we are not going to, most people at least, are not going to become enlightened beings in this lifetime. It's just the truth. So the way that I have this balance, because I'm easily susceptible to, doing this and doing that, I consider myself a very multidimensional being. I, very much experience the earth plane and I enjoy it. And I'll do, let's say, my morning healings in the morning, and then, I'll play and I'll do the very earthly things. And I do affirmations. I call it wording of my enoughness. So, to really answer that question, I think that if you're getting to a point of obsessiveness, of not doing it from a place of love and of fear instead,
yes,
I think that's
the answer, Taylor.
That's where because it can get to a place, and it's staying, with your intention. I think intention is everything. Why am I
Me
doing
too.
this?
Me too.
Why am I doing this healing because I'm afraid that I'm going to get sick if I don't, or I'm afraid I'm going to revert, or am I doing it from a place of love?
I'm going to miss something, or I'm
Yeah.
afraid I'm not going to be taken care of.
Exactly.
That's such a
It's the
wonderful
same thing with social
answer.
media, right? I'm off social media right now, and I don't
You
know when I'm going to
are?
come back.
You are a
Yeah.
brave soul. I'm so
Oh,
happy
oh
for
my
you.
gosh. See, I took 3 months off last year,
Good
2
for
months
you.
consecutively, and then 2 weeks off here and there. And, it was one of those things where I'm like, you know what, right now I need time to just do my own thing. Was I just like in this deep ayahuasca ceremony? No, I was like literally just doing my own thing. It was more so my soul telling me to take a break. And so I think that, and that's it right there. It's like, I was taking that break out of self-love. I don't give a shit about the algorithm. God's
Right.
going to take care of me. I'm not going to miss what's meant for me. So again, kind of going
say
back,
that one again. That's my favorite one.
yeah, I'm not going to miss what's meant for me.
Mm-hmm.
I can't, like, you can't, right? We're not going to miss that. And I truly believe it. Before social media, we all were able to somehow survive. We were all somehow still able to meet the people we needed to meet, or come in contact, or have that information come through. And so, I think that we're all doing the work of, stepping into our power, reminding ourselves that we are enough, and that, this healing work, it doesn't necessarily change you. It just makes you more of who you are. So if you just focus on, again, I will come back to gratitude, because I think that's everything.
Gratitude is everything. I just need
Yeah,
the
we
other
can
answer.
literally, I could tell you, 200 things right now that, I still haven't achieved yet, or I still want, but it's like, that doesn't matter. That's not going to bring me fulfillment. My most important focus is my joy. It's about, am I loving myself first? Am I loving other people? Does that, is it going to matter that, I'm just like blasted my channels open and I'm communicating? Like, no, at the end of the day, it's about being here. Otherwise we wouldn't be here. Otherwise you would be, up in the astral, unincarnated.
But it's really making that, I mean, this is really what my services are about. It's like really making this decision. And I think it's a decision, like, thoughts are thoughts, like making this decision. Okay. Like, I am here. I was put here. It is purposeful. What am I going to do to be purposeful? And what do I need to do to remove the blocks that are not, the whole world would be so different if we all aligned with this. Because I think that other thing, like that lower vibration, lower self, I always think that when I am like in this more negative space, my first thought is, this is so low vibration. You can't listen to a thing. Go try to change
it's not me. And that's the thing.
I don't think that, but now I'm going to.
Yeah. And if you believe in the light, if you believe in angels, and you believe in God,
what if you don't? Can you help us?
So if you're not,
what if they're listening? Like, oh, you too. Like, what can we do to help them?
I'm very compassionate when it comes to saying God, because I had a really hard time after transitioning out of, different church organizations. So I would say universe, I couldn't. And if you don't believe in universe, then, I would really encourage you to start looking into it and, start researching. There's a plethora of information nowadays. So there's really not an excuse to not know certain things. I always say that, you can build anything right now from learning on YouTube, right?
Yeah, YouTube University.
I think, I always say, give yourself grace and then get to work. I think that we are allowed to have periods of, just being frustrated and being upset and, having a little bit of a pity party, but don't stay there, really allow yourself to
don't move in.
Express. But at a certain point, how long are you going to keep energizing that narrative? How long are you going to keep telling yourself that same story? And I'm just telling you the truth, because that's not going to serve you. And
I think we should all put that on a Post-it somewhere. How long am I going to continue energizing that narrative? I'm putting that on a Post-it.
We all need it. I get into spaces sometimes like you, because again, we have these energies that don't want us to succeed. And I can see it now because of the work that I'm doing. I couldn't see it back when, talk about dealing with things. I dealt with debilitating anxiety my early 20s, to where I had to get on Prozac because I just could not handle it. Now, knowing what I know, these energies trying to bring me down, and I could feel them. And I've always been very empathic. And so, it's one of those things where you have to make a decision at some point and say, if I'm not feeling as I want to feel. If I'm feeling hopeless or helpless, you know, I need to, for one, get help, right? I think that's first and foremost. I would not recommend anyone to just only lean on healing work. I'm one of those people that believes in therapy. I think it's incredibly important, but also focusing on where you're at moving forward, right? Not just on the past, right? Having the supplementation of both. And so anyone who's in that space, I've been there, so I have lots of compassion for that. You have to make a decision, because as someone, as I mentioned at the beginning, who was full of excuses, nothing was ever my fault, ever. It didn't matter what it was. I got called out once. I'll just tell that quick story. A teacher called me out once, dance teacher, who was like, Taylor, just stop. Take responsibility for that and move on. And I was like, oh shit. Like I almost wanted to cry. I did cry, actually, like I didn't let anybody see me. But that moment, I was 21. I will never forget that. She had such an intricate part in my life, because I was like, holy shit, she just called my ass out. And at that moment, I was like, I have to take responsibility. So
I had I had such a moment too. I was in a workshop with Carolyn Mace.
Oh my God, I love her.
Well, what's not to love? And I was in the front row. Sorry, not to brag.
She's a badass.
Let's just talk about a badass teacher. Talk about someone who does not care about what you think of her. I was in the front row, and I was like that too. Everything was happening to me. If you had a life like mine, you know, all of that. Carolyn Mace looks at everybody and she says, when you are feeling like a victim, you forget that you have choices. And you have choices. And every moment of my life, when I go back into that victim space, I'm like, what you are forgetting right now, that you have choices. You are complete. What are you forgetting? Right. What is the choice you are making to be in this space right now? What are you forgetting? It's
tell yourself
powerful.
The truth. You know, telling yourself the truth is not fun. It's not.
No, it isn't.
And, you know, the truth is a frequency. If we're talking about energy, the truth is a frequency. So when you start to tell yourself the truth, you know, then it's liberating. It's freeing whenever you're able to actually see it. You may not actually take action on that quite yet, but, you know, the longer that you wait, the longer you perpetuate it. Right. And, you know, again, going back to the compassion aspect, I definitely believe in the grace and moving through it. But then there's also a point where you have to, you know, get to work. You have to start being resourceful.
I love it. We can, you don't have to answer this, but what are your wording of enoughness? Can you tell us so we can make our own?
Wording of enoughness.
You know, what are your mantras? You said you do mantras every single day. Do you know them by heart?
Oh yeah. So I follow a man named Paul Selig. He has,
good.
You know Paul?
Of course.
Oh, so I follow his
these are all in the show notes, everyone. I put all the teachers in the show notes.
So you are in the know. So the same group that he channels are the same group that I work with. So it's very much, you know, so for those who don't know who Paul Selig is, he channels a collective group called Melchizedek. And if you love this conversation, you'll love this work, because they very much want you to step into your own power. They want you to take full responsibility. So one of the things that I'm always just telling myself is, I know who I am, I know what I am, and I know how I serve.
Yes.
And, you know, I am word and I am worthy, meaning I am divinity in form. That's another really powerful one too. I am divinity in form. It is safe to be powerful. Ooh. I am worthy, right? That's very simple.
I hope everybody's like going back 30 seconds right now and getting their pen.
Yeah. And, you know, these are things that sound so small, but when we talk about wording, these words hold frequencies, they hold energies. So you're not just saying these things and being like, okay, you know, it's all about the intention, of course, too, but it's actually transforming your energy. And so when you start doing these wordings and, you know, again, saying things like, I know who I am. I know what I am.
And a belief is a repeated thought. Like,
yes,
I actually want to just reflect, like, you say that like you believe it, you know, and I'm sure you believe it because you've been saying it for 6 years every single day.
You know, when I first said it, I was like, I am crazy.
Right, exactly.
What does this even mean?
I am not. Right. But I think it's like an important thing to say. Like, I wasn't made this way. I mean, I still have some of that. I think it's part of my charm, but like, you weren't made of this. Like, you know, we had to work for it. I had to hustle. I sat with Carolyn Mace for hours.
Ooh, you are brave.
I know, in the front row. It really shows my capacity to want to get well. Oh my God. This is such a treat. Like literally we could talk all day.
Well, and you're going to be on my podcast. So
I know,
we're
I'm so
going to,
excited.
go for
And
it.
maybe we'll do
Yeah.
it again. I mean, you're the
Yeah.
kind of person I want to talk to all day. Where can we find you if we want to do not one-off sessions? We
Yes.
understand. We understand, Taylor. But if we're really committed to wanting to do,
I do not do one-off
there are
sessions.
no one-off sessions with Taylor. I love that. What a beautiful boundary. I might have to start
Yeah.
that. You can do a one-off session with me. I'm going to work with Taylor probably and get better boundaries. Where can we find you?
So the best place would be my podcast, which is
Ooh.
called Vibe Higher. So
Well, they're all
that's
going to go
where
because we're all besties. So it'll be great.
exactly. That's where I'm most active. As I mentioned, I'm not on social right now, but give me a follow if you're intrigued to learn more. I have tons of content there,
Yeah,
which is
it's
I
very
am
true.
Taylor Stone. So you can go there. And then also my website is iamtaylorstone.com.
Oh, amazing. Yeah. I mean, that's how I felt in love with you. I was like, let me look at her
Aw,
Instagram. And
so
I was like,
sweet.
yes, 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 yes. Come on my podcast. I'm so glad you came on my podcast. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. You're
Thank
amazing.
you for having me. Yeah, we need to do it again.
Yeah, definitely. See you soon.